For the first episode of Don't Be Caged by Your Age, I wanted to begin with a conversation around the data about ageism and how it's wasting a generation of talent. Most of us need a reason to get out of bed every day. And in fact, I recently learned 7 out of 10 pre-retirees want to keep working and being relevant, visible, engaged, connected, and on purpose. Our guest, Victoria Tomlinson, has brought the receipts. She's the founder of Next Up, and you'll learn how she's helping folks over 60 shift from feeling apprehensive about retirement to excited about the opportunities ahead. Stay tuned for a delicious conversation. Welcome to Don't Be Caged by Your Age, a podcast devoted to dissolving ageist beliefs and fears and providing pathways for you to repurpose, reimagine, and reinvent your decades of lived experiences. I'm your host, Ande Lyons, celebrating my 67th year of living, and I know you'll find the resources, ideas, and inspiration you need to thrive after 65. Welcome to Don't Be Caged by Your Age, Victoria. I'm so happy you're here to share your insights and advice with our listeners on the very first episode of the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, and what an honor, Ande. I'm so delighted to be here. We interviewed you some years ago now, I think, for our podcast, and you left everybody inspired. So I'm just delighted to come back and share where we're going at the moment. Thank you.
That's wonderful. And please let listeners know where you're hailing from.
So I'm in the UK, in England, in the north of England, in a town called Harrogate in North Yorkshire. It's very beautiful. And finally today it's sunny.
Oh, well, listeners, I wanted to have Victoria on the first episode because this woman has for 6 years been in the thick of it, talking about ageism. And so I wanted to get the stats, the insights, and all the information for you in this conversation. And Victoria, I find this statistic fascinating. 7 in 10 pre-retirees say they want to work in retirement. And it's not always about the money. Many simply want to keep working because they're at the top of the game, or they want to provide mental stimulation or maintain friendships and connections, or to use this time to transition into something new and different that they've always wanted to do. So let's talk about when you discovered that a whole generation's talent was being wasted due to ageism and forced retirement. What was that like? What happened? What was that aha moment for you?
Well, I'm going to go back a little bit, Ande, and say to you, when did retirement come in? I'm horrified to discover it was somebody called Otto von Bismarck, whom I have hated because I had to learn about him in history, and I've always hated him because he did all the unification and whatever of Germany, and it was men just banging heads and fighting, which I hated. However, he wanted to encourage older workers to leave the workforce and bring on younger ones. So he set the retirement age, and this was in 1889. And at that time, he set it at 70 years old, because that was the age you were expected to die. Now, that's where this all came from. Roosevelt, I can't believe I'm talking about history because it's not normally me. I'm always about the future. However, it's interesting because this is relevant. Roosevelt then set it in 1935. He did the Social Security Act, right, and set a different age. That was when it came 65. Now, we are expected to die. I put in my age expectancy to the Aviva calculator. I'm expected to live to 94 years old. Now, if you look at, I'm 68 at the moment. That means I have got another 26 years, and I'm already 68, when most people think, why on earth are you still, working and driving forward? Well, the answer is I'm loving what I'm doing. And I think there's a great privilege for a lot of us at this age to do the things that really you want to do and enjoy. You're a great example of that, Ande. Yes, there may be some trial and error. We might try some things, get bored, move on, whatever. But in the end, we're not having to stick it out in a job that we really can't stand. We're very lucky in a way, I think, if we use it.
Absolutely.
So why is this a problem, though? Because people, they're exhausted from work, where they're working 24/7. They maybe haven't been very motivated. They haven't got a great boss, and they can't wait to stop working. So they focus on the stopping, not what they're going to start doing. And the human being is not very well designed to have a life that's just doing nothing. We need purpose. If you have purpose in your life, you have 10 active years longer than people who don't have purpose. And you're also 2.5 times less likely to get Alzheimer's. So there's a whole kind of societal issue here about keeping active and engaged. But what I was seeing was I had a previous business, which was comms business. And I was seen as very odd. I used to chair boards and I was on boards, but I was very early on social media. And I was seen as a bit of a LinkedIn guru. So I started being sent very senior people who were leaving corporate life. They were avoiding that word retirement because they didn't see themselves as retiring. And they started coming to me for help with LinkedIn, with introductions. What am I going to do? And I started hearing stories that they had never shared with anybody. And they would say things like, I'm a failure for the first time in my life. I mean, these are people like really very successful senior bankers, quite well-known names coming to see me. And I began to see more and more. And actually, it didn't matter if you were senior or not. Whatever you're doing, it's the human being is not good with retirement. Some people, they may find that gardening is enough, that the grandchildren are enough. But most people need a sense of purpose, a reason to get up in the morning. So what we're trying to do is help people understand that. And what I was saying, I was starting to show people what's called the grief curve. You may have come across this. It's called the change curve or the grief curve. And it's a series of emotions. I don't know if you've sadly lost anybody close to you, Ande, but
yes,
a series of recognized emotions, which involves anger, guilt, and there's an element of depression in there before you start getting acceptance and enthusiasm. So it's a kind of curve that you go through. And I remember a couple of people saying this would have helped me. I thought it was me. I've not heard anybody talk about this process and things, and I thought I was a failure. So instead of understanding this is a process that you go through, if you think about it, at work, you've got an identity, you've got that reason to get up, you've got clients, teams, whatever.
Your day is scheduled in a way that feels good. It leaves you on purpose. I'm curious about this failure word. How did that keep popping up? Why did that keep popping up after people have been active and engaged and happening for so many years?
We didn't plan. And a lot of them said, I just thought things, I haven't planned my career. Things have come to me. I haven't gone out looking for things. So maybe they've been promoted or somebody had approached them. They might even have moved companies and things, but people always came to them to say, we want you to do. And they didn't even think about it. It's just they expected that to continue once they had retired. So when people weren't coming to them, they started applying for things. And if you'd asked them to push, these people I was seeing would have said, I probably was expecting to get non-executive advisory roles of some kind. They didn't really know what it looked like exactly. But they then started applying for things. And of course, the world doesn't really want white men, that a lot of them were, but even women. They'd left it too late to get that experience of non-executive experience. They didn't have the skills. Boards are looking for cyber, data skills, all sorts of things, diversity. And they weren't really fitting the boat, so they weren't getting anything, and they were constantly being rejected. I have to say that is a really difficult route, and I hear of very successful women having 100 to 200 rejections before they get their first advisory non-executive role.
Wow.
Yet, and actually it's really like more work. It's very pressured. It's very whatever. The world is full of people who would love their help and their experience, if you like. And you don't have to be senior. I say you could have been, say, if you're a dinner lady, I don't really have them in the States, but we have dinner ladies in primary schools where they serve up the food and they look after the littlies. But they will, by the time they're 50, 60, they'll be able to walk into a room of little children and they'll know who's the little one feeling left out, who's the bully in the room, who's, what's going on in this playground, etc. And they will be able to help children. They'll be able to get down and sort of say, why don't we go and play on the swing or whatever? And they'll have great skills in whatever field they've built up that expertise in. And we're not using that. We run workshops for professional firms, for partners pre-retirement. And as part of it, we're giving them the truth about what they probably won't get. But then we say, look, there's all these people. And we bring in entrepreneurs, very often tech entrepreneurs, and say, we're going to give you a mentoring session. We'll have worked with the entrepreneur and found a challenge that we think anyone can help them with. And they kind of go, oh, I don't do tech. And we go, you don't need to. They'll do all the tech in the world. They don't have that life experience. How do I go and sell to a big corporate? I don't know anybody in. How do I explain my business to an old person like us? How do I do whatever? And very often it's things like, what risks might I have if I go down this route or that? And they're good at just advising, asking good questions.
Oh my gosh, yes. Those
it's amazing.
decades.
And it's so vibrational. I can't tell you. It's absolutely wonderful.
It has to be fascinating because the decades of lived experience. I love the lunch ladies, the dining ladies, as you say in the UK, experience, because they weren't just serving up food. They were understanding their customer experience, right? The children that were coming through the line.
Yes.
And you're helping everyone reframe what it is that they've learned along the way and how they can repurpose, reimagine, and reinvent themselves. And we're not taught how to reinvent ourselves naturally. I mean, entrepreneurs kind of do it because that's just how we've been for decades. But most people, but most people are not entrepreneurs. So they've gone through a channel. Maybe they've had different jobs along the way, but they've been the same skill set. And so now to say, okay, and I'm going to use a guy who commented on my post. Listeners, I have a great post on LinkedIn called Don't Be Caged by Your Age. And so many amazing responses. And this one guy, I think he'd been in insurance for almost 30 years, Victoria. And he left and he started gardening. And then he noticed all the pollinators and the bees. And he said, oh, I love bees. Maybe I should get some hives. And so then he got some hives. And then the next thing you know, he had a honey business because he had to do something with all the honey. He didn't know that. He didn't know what those talents and experiences that he learned and gleaned during his years in the insurance industry, how that could help him move product, set things up. Yeah. But we have this, listeners, people cannot take away from you what you have between your ears, and that is your brain and your heart and your passion. And Victoria, what I was really surprised at as I started doing research for the podcast was that in 2021, the World Health Organization came out with a big study talking about this lost generation of talent, right? How it is costing societies, not just US, not just UK, but multiple societies, billions of dollars a year because people are getting sent out to pasture way too soon. And then all of a sudden, boom, they've got all these health challenges. Boom, they're depressed. All of these things start happening and it's very costly versus, hey, it doesn't have to be this way. So let's talk a little bit about, because I remember in our conversations in the past, you talk about how retirement's almost immoral and how it's like morally wrong. Talk a little bit about that, because we need to address the mental health component. It's one thing, you've been a postal worker for forever and you're ready to hang up your bag and walking and driving, but you're not ready to give it up. Like you said, your age expectancy is another 25 plus years. Yep. So let's talk a little bit about that.
So I think you need to go back earlier. I've done a lot of research and I've been working with large employers since we've been talking, Ande. And what we're seeing is, there's a couple of things that have seriously shocked me. I was working with a really decent, very large bank, and they referred just in passing to their 50 plus generation as permafrost. Now, I don't know whether, your face
permafrost. Is Did you hear that?
I could hardly finish the conversation because these were really decent people, and it had clearly become just a normal phrase that they had lost touch with how bad that was. And I sort of thought, I can't believe these are people. They're not frost, they're not frozen, but they're half frozen. And so when we talk about the cost of retirement, we've got the cost of people who aren't being motivated from much younger on, Ande. What I'm seeing is people stop investing in training, and I don't think it's that much different in the States, so I would love to think it is. People have stopped training from about 40 years old in terms of a development. They'll do regulatory training and whatever's needed, but you don't have interviews. I can't understand this. When I left corporate world many years ago, you always had an annual appraisal. You were asked what ambitions, where you're going, what skills, what training, and that all seems to stop. as you know, it's all done with the youngsters in their early parts of their careers or with partners in their early part of their careers. But people don't expect you still to have ambitions as you get older. So you stop having all those conversations, as far as I can find. I'd love to know if people want to challenge me. I'm very up for that. But
Yeah,
that's
listeners,
I'm
if
yeah.
your organization is doing that, let us know in
Yeah.
the comments wherever you're tuning in.
The other thing, even good organizers, I was talking to one law firm this morning, and they're a real leader in their space. They're very innovative. They're fantastic with their people. And I was asking them, do they measure employee engagement by age? And they went, actually, we don't. And so, in fact, when you're doing your diversity, age now should be one of the pillars, as we refer to them, one of your pillars of diversity. And you should measure and look at, and I think you will find this horrendous phrase, permafrost, you'll find a lot of people are disengaged, they're unhappy, and therefore they have wound down, they're not being re-energized, and therefore when you get redundancy programs, people are hanging on to get a big package to leave. Now they haven't planned that properly. They think it's going to be a joyous time, and then they leave and they discover people don't want to recruit older people, and that they can't get jobs. They don't have the skills to go and ask people, what help would you like? So I'm working with somebody at the moment, and he's been in his company for a very long time, and he's very senior, and he doesn't know what to do next. He's looking for something with purpose, and I've got lots of ideas and plans for him. And I've sort of set him off on a journey to go and meet some people. I've called it my magical mystery tour for him. And I just was catching up with him this morning, and he said, I can't believe, why would anybody want to meet me? You kind of go, oh my God, you're very senior in this very well-known company. Why wouldn't they? And this insecurity is quite surprising to me. And he said, I'm so surprised at how people are happy to be meeting. And then they introduced me to somebody else. And he said, I've had 6 meetings so far. And he said, it's all becoming less worrying and it's less, he said, it's taking the fear out of it. I said, what's it? He said, well, this is something about the cliff edge and the sea, and it's all coming closer together. I didn't really know where he was going with all of that. But he said it's sort of becoming more real. And I was asking him, because we had done a workshop for them a few years ago. And I said, what did you get out of that? And then where's it gone? And he said, well, the workshop was brilliant because it made me realize I need to plan and I need to start thinking. And now since then, I've been trying to plan and think, but I don't know where to start really. And I don't know what. So I've been sort of picking him up recently, but he's very insecure. He doesn't know what to do. And he said, I'm surprised at how uncompetitive it is in the outside world, which was an interesting point, how people are very generous when you're not really trying to he's used to pitching for work and things.
Oh, yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's a perfect example, Victoria, of what this show is all about. Yeah. Internalized ageist beliefs. Yeah. So you can see yourself as a vibrant, active person, but now that you're retired, you need to get a cane, you need to get some and with all due respect to everybody has a cane, but you know what I'm saying, this picture that they show of you, even with vibrant folks that are out there, Jane Fonda or who are really
look at you, Andy, you're glamorous, you've got a gorgeous necklace here, very lovely hair, you're smiling, vibrant. You don't look whatever age you are at all. And I just think it's the energy that you've got because you're happy.
And what I love is that for that gentleman or for anybody who is reaching this stage of their lives, as you talk about the pre-retiree, so you're in your 50s and you're thinking about retirement, but now it's hitting you in the face, you're in your 60s and you're thinking, okay, now I have to be this other person that I have internalized because I have ageist beliefs inside myself that says, this is what I'm supposed to do here. And having energy and being sprightly and engaged and wanting to learn more has not been the indoctrination. The indoctrination is you're a horse, go out to pasture.
But you know what, Andy?
Yeah.
I think we're starting to get a recognition of, so what is this generation really good at? They tend to be good at people, at relationship building, and knowing how to talk. So, not everybody, but younger generation are happy to pick up and text or email somebody rather than actually talk to them. And I met a wonderful young man, I'm not allowed to say young man anymore, but anyway, last week, and he works for a company called Gallagher Re. And he was saying how they're really trying to recruit older people. So he's 30 years old, I think, around that age. And he said, I needed to find somebody who's really good with our customers and can have really good grown-up conversations. And they've recruited somebody who's 51 years old. And she was worried about coming back. She'd been off for 12 years and she's been caring and fostering children in that time. And she said, I'm really worried about coming back. It's going to be difficult. And I thought, how insightful and how caring. He said, after what you've been through, this is going to be a breeze. This is the best bit out of intergenerational working. And how good for him. He's a classic white young man, and he really got this and what the skills were that he needed. And I just thought, I'm absolutely loving this. And how inspiring is that?
Well, it's so inspiring. I think that's what we see in our Z and young millennial generation is this love. I mean, here in the US, they love Bernie Sanders, for example, right? Can't get enough of him. Joe Biden, same thing. And I was in the startup ecosystem listeners for 8+ years as a global mentor. And I had the Startup Life live show. My biggest fans were under 30. At the same time, the side of the coin was I would show up at events for the startup founders and someone would say, well, you've got to be able to pitch your business as if you were talking to your grandmother. And I'd be like, hello, stop the show right now.
Grandmothers are very different when we were younger. Oh my God.
I know we are highly educated, and especially in the tech industry, you have women who are in their 60s and were part and early 70s who remember what it was like in the 70s, have been coding since the 70s. So that's a real insult to a whole population of people.
Yes.
And as we're talking about today, which is this whole generation of folks whose talents aren't being tapped into. So I love the pro-aging vibe of that 30-year-old male that you talked to who was so honest and saying, oh, please, after what you've been through, whether it was raising kids or dealing with an illness or whatever, this is going to be a breeze.
I'm going to mention their names because I was trying to remember as I was talking whether it's been public, and I was thinking, can I be there? But he's called Freddie Scarrett, and good for you, Freddie, because I was impressed. And he's recruited Melissa, but it was on LinkedIn, so I'm just remembering that so that I can actually name them. And it's Gallagher Ree, and I just thought it was one of the most inspiring stories. And he said how good HR had been working with them to help both sides because he recognised he needed a bit of help. It's just
well, and he made her dissolve her own ageist beliefs, internalized ageist beliefs, which is what I think is so important. But you gave us a great example of the law firm not doing the right, thoughtful understanding and analysis and information gathering for ages and the varying ages. What other things do corporations need to do to support pre-retirees? Because we're going to have listeners who are in their pre-retiree age that maybe they could pass this along and they could help reinvent how their company views folks who are aging.
Okay, so we've got our pre-retirement platform that we've been working with large corporates with. And I was trying to get it all right last week. And I suddenly realized I came across a report. This is by Yorkshire Building Society saying they're talking about the digital skills shortage in financial services. This particular report is just about Yorkshire, but it's reflected across the UK, across the world. We've got a massive shortage of digital skills. I'm involved in several things, including Wild Digital, which is about getting much more diversity into tech, because you've got to have lots of different people designing products and services, or they won't be working for everybody. And I suddenly had one of those eureka moments. I thought, this is what we need to be doing. So we need to be helping the 50+ generation to reskill and to be confident to go and get those tech skills. People have been talking-ish about this for a long time, but it's becoming really imperative now.
Yes.
So I think they need to be giving people confidence. And there was just an article this weekend about Tony Blair's son. He's got an amazing business, Multiverse, where they're now getting apprenticeships for the 55+ generation. And I'm wanting to work with him. We've just been chatting, so I don't know where it'll go, but let's hope it goes. And what we want to do is find a way to work out, de-barrier these things. That's not a very good phrase, you know what I mean. But to work out why people are so worried about tech, what it is. It's all mindset. And try and break that down. So what I want is this new platform, Rethinking 50 Plus. I'm going to have it ready very quickly, I'm saying. And I want a few corporates to work with us on this as we build it. So I think it needs to cover skills. So it's aimed at the employee to say, look, you could have another 50, 60 years of your life. What do you want to do with that? Why don't you think about what you're doing while you're still working? There's so many opportunities where your current employer is probably looking for all sorts of skills, and they may well offer training. And if they don't, this is where you can go. Have a think about that. Then you've got every organization has got every ESG initiative under the sun about Me Too, diversity, climate change, sustainability, all these initiatives. These things are really good for the 50 plus generation because they're good at relationship building and understanding how do we get people motivated and get involved in things. So why don't you get involved in that? Because these are all good things for you long term. They're building new skills, new networks, new relationships, new connections, not networks. I hate the word network. And that what you're doing is building up new things to make you ready when you do leave, brackets, retire, unretire, whatever we call that horrible word. And you actually need to have a plan. So start thinking now, seeing if you can get building skills in your company, volunteering, whatever it is, and start thinking about what do I really love doing? What do I hate doing? You may be really good at something, and actually I never ever want to prepare an end of year set of accounts or whatever it might be. It's up to you. This is your time. What would you like to do? And helping them understand where there's a need in society, things that they could get involved in. I'm working with somebody amazing it's Matt Smith. He's the chief exec of Key Fund, and they invest in the most deprived communities in the UK. And there was a fantastic example he gave of a mum who'd been in a domestic abuse relationship, and her children were so terrified they couldn't leave her side. But she started a community cafe. Now, she's brilliant at the community cafe, and her children can stay with her while they're getting more confident. But she's never run a business. She has no idea about cash flow, budgets, all that kind of thing. How many people, you don't need to be a financial whiz to come in and say, we just need to work out how much money you need for the year. How are you going to get that? You might run short in the summer. Why don't you think about doing something else? And just helping them to look at that. There are children in schools who've had very difficult, those little children may grow up to have some problems. Children who've got difficult relationships around them, they may not have parents, grandparents. Wouldn't it be lovely just to sort of a lovely lady who's been fostering and caring, actually? You don't have to go that far, but maybe you could become a surrogate granny to people. You could go into schools. You could help with reading. There's a whole depending on your interest.
Yeah.
There's things to help people with.
And it's reimagining, listeners, and it's pulling on threads, as Victoria said, finding out, ooh, that kind of lights me up. That doesn't light me up. And let me tell you, 10 years down the road, that thing that didn't light you up may light you up.
Yes.
You just need to constantly be exploring. And this is so good for your mental and physical health. So if you want to really enjoy these, quote, golden years, it's important to take the time out and really look at who you be in the world and what would help you. And also dissolve those indoctrinated beliefs that you have around, I don't know how to manage money. I'm not good with math. And then the ultimate, I could never do tech. Please, you can do tech. Okay. If you can file your nails, you can do tech, with all due respect. If you can cook a meal, you can do tech. It really is not that hard. And what might feel hard today is going to be a breeze before you know it. So I'm just going to encourage everybody to open up their eyes and their hearts. And I'm very, very excited about this platform. I know it's about rethinking retirement platform. I'm going to have all the links in the show notes, listeners. But if you want to get a quick, check out next-up.com. That is Victoria's company. It has tons of resources, etc. So, Victoria, what does someone entering, quote, unretirement do with their LinkedIn profile? We're so used to jamming with our LinkedIn as a personal and professional brand for us. Do you have any advice for folks who are tuning in to say, okay, I don't want to hide out because I'm 55 plus on LinkedIn. I don't want to be caged by my age on LinkedIn. What advice do you have for their LinkedIn profile?
Okay, well, first thing I say, because a lot of people hate it and they've avoided it, and that's where this business started from. So The first thing I would say is there are no phone books anymore. So how do people get in touch with you? How do they know if you're interested in helping or something or not? So first of all, wake up and look at what's going on in the world. I love this woman that I spoke to this morning. She's 76 years old. And she said, somebody contacted me on LinkedIn this morning from Oman, a lawyer, and she's got an idea about farming. And I'm thinking, whoa, what? And if you've got a profile and you haven't done anything, let me just say to you, get a lot of rubbish. You will get all sorts of stuff because the algorithms don't know how to send you stuff. They don't know what you're interested in. As soon as you start sharing, posting information, etc., the algorithms get, now I think you might be interested in this. And you can help them you won't even know you're doing it by sharing, seeing who you're engaging with. It will start sending you things and getting you involved with people who are interesting to you. So first of all, believe in it. Trust me, I promise you, once you get into it, it is most amazing. Secondly, think about what is it that I want to do. As much, you can change LinkedIn once a day, once a week, once a month. You won't do it, but don't worry about, I've got to get it perfect. Just put some stuff up there where you're at now. Hi guys, I'm interested in volunteering in farming and local farmers or whatever. Anybody up for it? It doesn't matter what it is, just to help people know what you might be interested in, how to have a relationship with you, of that kind of thing.
And there's a very easy way, and reach out to me, listeners, if you need help with this. I'll probably do a video for it, but there's a way to go in and change, that if you look at some profiles, it says talks about hashtag, farming, whatever. You can change that daily as well, what you're talking about. It's very easy to go in and change that in your profile. So
people change it this weekend, I think. Again, I got a notice, I haven't looked at it properly. LinkedIn's changed all sorts of stuff around there, but it's not difficult. And there's so much, ton of stuff. Go to Ande's, all her resources are amazing too. There's so much out there. It's not difficult to find this.
It is. It's wonderful. And again, Victoria, that advice that we don't have the yellow pages anymore or the white pages anymore or a phone book at all. Like, how do you find out what people are up to? It is LinkedIn, and it's the best platform for that because it really is the community service type of platform. Oh my gosh, listeners, please reach out to Victoria and her team if you'd like help analyzing your skills and experience, polishing your personal branding, or could use an expert mentor and some introductions, practical help for starting a business or becoming a consultant. Find more creative ways to bring your brilliance to the world, your lived experience to the world. I'll have all her links in the show notes, and of course, connect with her on LinkedIn.
Absolutely, love it.
Victoria, you and the team at Next Up are the gift that keeps on giving. Any last thoughts for folks before we wrap up our delicious conversation?
Don't underestimate how challenging this stage of life can be, but the more you plan, the less it will be. And if you're having a difficult time, it's not you, it's a process you've got to get through. Find some things to do, go and just offer to help some people, and you'll be amazed what comes out of that. You might like it, you might not, but you'll get some ideas and they'll introduce you to somebody else and you'll start an amazing new world that you didn't ever imagine existed. It'll be fun. Have fun.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Something fierce. Thank you, Victoria, so much for joining us on the first episode of Don't Be Caged by Your Age. What a treat to spend time with you and learn so much from you. And listeners, remember, you have so much to give. Don't let those internalized ageist beliefs prevent you from pursuing new dreams and opportunities after 60. You're amazing everywhere you glow. Thank you, Victoria, for joining me.
I've loved it. Thank you.
Listeners, I'm so grateful you carved out time to tune in and grab the gems from this delicious conversation. Be sure to hop on over to Don't Be Caged by Your Age on LinkedIn or Instagram to share your thoughts about ageism and unretirement. Because in this space, your age doesn't define you, it refines you. If you are inspired by a story you hear, it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe, share, rate, and review the podcast. To receive an alert whenever a new show is posted, please join the Don't Be Caged by Your Age newsletter. Every month, you'll receive links to the podcast and helpful resources for creating possibilities for your unretirement days. Thank you for tuning in. I am so excited to hear how you found ways to thrive after 65. Waving from Boston, cheers.